All right, we are on worksheet 61, and it's a 7-4 practice worksheet out of the textbook. Now, the first two problems are giving you this triangle over here, and honestly, I'm going to rewrite this triangle so I can scribble all over it. So it says we want to find the sine, cosine, and tangent of R. So that's why I wrote these here. And then we want to find sine, cosine, and tangent of S. Now, express each ratio as a fraction and as a decimal. I don't know why I don't have that underlined. Oh, because it's rounded to the nearest hundred. Okay. So we are not solving for the missing angle. These are back at the beginning when we wrote sine, cosine, tangent, and we just wrote the ratio, just the fraction. So you have your little sheets out with you. Take this triangle and resketch it over here. So take a minute, resketch your triangle so we can label it. Hopefully you'll do a better job than me.
Every time I do that, it looks nothing like the actual triangle.
Well, did you see my triangle? It's pretty bad.
You actually want us to?
Yep, I do want you to redraw it. So the reason I'm redrawing it is because we have two different problems. We're putting two different sets of numbers on here. Now, when I look at this triangle, just to remind you of this, the vertices are capital letters, and the side opposite is the lowercase letter. That's how I know that T goes with the opposite angle. S goes with S. All right, so go ahead and label your sides. R is 16, so that's 16. T is 34, and S is 30. Now, the first thing we're doing is we are doing everything on angle R. So, on angle R, I'm going to circle that in green here. If I'm talking about angle R, this is the hypotenuse. That's not going to change. But if I'm on angle R, this side is the adjacent side, and this side is the opposite. So when I go to do my sine, cosine, and tangent, maybe it will help you to put your SOHCAHTOA on here. I think using that's a nice reference. So I know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Now, you can also use your little sheet where it has it written out for you, and it's reminding you of the sides based on that angle. All right, so if I am doing opposite, which is 16, over hypotenuse, which is 34, you can't leave me that. So we need to toss that in our calculators and reduce it, or you can divide it by hand. In my calculator, it is 16 fraction 34. In the other blue calculators, it would be 16, and you have that little ABC key, or you have a little slash key, sorry. I can hit enter and it reduces it. The other calculators, you have to hit the simplify key and then hit enter. All right, so dividing both of these by 2, I get the number 8/17. And I need the decimal. I'm running out of room. So you can just take 16 divided by 34 and use your division symbol, and there's my decimal. If you had the fraction in there and you had that reduced fractions, you guys have a key. If you hit second, there's a key that says F to D, fraction decimal, and I totally didn't hit second.
Can you do that again?
Well, yours is a little bit different, I think. So I hit second and have a key that says FD. I think you just have a key that says F or D. Do you, Tessa? Did you find your fraction decimal key?
I'm just trying to figure out how to put it in a fraction.
All right, bring it up here real quick. What is it? Okay. So let me show you on this calculator here. So when you're looking at it and you want to put in the fraction, you're typing in 16 and you have a fraction slash. That's the slash there. Right. So 16/34. Now yours is different. You have to hit simplify and then hit enter. Okay, there's your fraction. And then see your little D, there's a key that says D right there. If I hit that, see it's telling it decimal. Okay, so fraction decimal. Okay, so it says nearest hundredth, so 0.47. Now you are going to do the same thing for cosine. So cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent for us is 30, the hypotenuse is 34. We're going to reduce that. You can use your calculator or your brain. That would be 15/17. It doesn't go any further. I'm definitely going to use my calculator to reduce it. So 15.
I did second, right?
For you to put in.
Go to the decimal?
No, you just have to hit the decimal key on yours. See right under the fraction key, there's a little d key.
0.88.
Yep, 0.88, it would be what you round it to. So what they're looking for is the reduced fraction in that decimal. All right, so tangent of r, well, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So here's r, opposite is 16, adjacent is 30. Okay, so go ahead, put that in your calculator and reduce. I get 8/15, and then I'm going to get my decimal, which is 0.53 repeating. So they said nearest hundredth, so 0.53. Don't put a little repeating sign over it because then you didn't round it. Okay. Now, what you might want to do is you could redraw your triangle, or maybe, if you have something, you could do something different with it. But I think I would do a real quick resketch of my triangle because I need to relabel everything. So here's SRT.
Why?
There's my angle. Well, because now everything's based on sine. So the sides are still the same. R is still 16. S is right here, and it's still 30. And T is 34. So even if they didn't give us the little t, r, and s, T is opposite capital T. And the reason I redid this is because now everything's based on angle S. So now the 16 is my adjacent. See how I'm flipping that? And the 30 is my opposite, 34 still my hypotenuse. So I think it's worth redrawing it to help yourself label. And now you're just going to go through the same thing. Okay? So redrawing the triangle, I think is helpful. Now, you want to use the original triangle to label the first part, great. But I would resketch that same triangle and relabel your new sides and relabel your opposite and adjacent. Okay, so that's how you're doing those. You want the reduced fraction in the decimal. So that's in the directions, fraction and decimal. All right, let's jump down to these guys. These should be super simple. Nearest 10,000th is 4 decimal places. This is just a matter of throwing it in your calculator. So if they say find the sine of 5, on my calculator, I just hit sine. I type in 5. For good practice, close the parentheses, and I get my decimal. Now, if you have the light blue calculators, the TI-34s, you have to hit second in that trig key. So second, it says PRB, and it's about right here. And then whatever's highlighted is what you select. So nearest
Do I want the -1?
10,000th. Nope, that's the inverse. You just want the sign of it. When we use the inverses, then we're missing an angle. I see.
All mine are like done.
All yours are what?
Like done.
What do you mean done?
They're already done.
On your paper?
Yeah.
Well, maybe you're bored one day. I don't know. Did you get the decimal?
Yeah.
All right, so nearest 10,000. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 10th, 100th, 1000th, 10,000th. The 5 tells you to round it up. So 0.0872.
Why are all mine done?
I don't know. 0.0872. All right, let's do one more. Let's find our tangent function. So for me, I just hit tangent. For some of you, it's second and the PRB key for the trig function. And then you're going to arrow over and select just tangent, not the inverse. Close the parenthesis. 10th, 100th, 1000th, 10,000th. The 7 tells me to round it up. So 0.4245. Okay, so I'm content that we know how to do that. Now let's flip it over to the back. This is where it's a little different, not too much different. It says, express the answers as a fraction decimal around the nearest 10,000. So this is exactly what we did here, okay? Exactly what we did here, where we found the fraction in that using our SOA-CATOA. The difference is they want you to round nearest 10,000th, which is 4 decimal places. Okay, so I have complete faith that you can do that. You're not solving for C, you're just doing the trig ratio based on here. Now, the next thing, this is where it's different. We are trying to find the measure of the acute angle to the 10th of a degree. Okay, See how I'm missing an angle? What I need you to understand is this was the ratio. This came from sine. It was the opposite over hypotenuse, and this is the decimal answer. So how does this connect? If we come back to here and I cover this up, see how you have sine r equals this decimal 0.47? That decimal 0.47 comes from 16 over 34. You guys are killing me. So this sine r 0.47, it came from the opposite over hypotenuse. Now, instead of just giving the ratio, we're asking you to go a step further and find the missing angle. All right. I don't know why he... Okay, I'm trying not to pause the video, but I definitely have a goofball in this classroom. So I am asking you to find B. So anytime you're finding an angle, so anytime you're asked to find an angle, you are going to use the inverse. So how do you break off the sign? Because normally we just type in sign of the number. How do I break that off? I take the inverse sign. So this is when I use my inverse. So sine inverse and sine are going to cancel out, and I'm going to get B equals, and I just type this in. So on my calculator, I hit my second function, and I hit sine to use the inverse sign. On the light blue calculators, the 34s, you're going to hit second, and you're going to hit your probability key to get trig and arrow over to that. Make sure it's sine -1, and then put in your decimal. Don't skip anything.
Can we put in 0 then?
No, well, you can put in the 0. I skipped that, but don't skip any of these numbers. Like if it was 0.0, you would need that 0 after the decimal. And we get 17.367. It goes on. Now it said round to the nearest tenth of a degree. So 17.4. And you did find the measure of the angle, so the answer is in degrees. All right, so let's do the next one. Tangent of A. Well, what would cancel out tangent is the inverse. So I would like to see you write tangent -1, not just a little -1. This is telling us that you use the inverse tangent operation. So what does A equal? Well, let's let our calculator do the work for us. Inverse tangent of 0.4168. And it's going to be 22.6. So we need the nearest tenth. The 100th place tells us what to do. 22.6 degrees. So a lot of this worksheet is really just calculator work to make sure that you know what you're doing and put it in there. Now, go down to the last section. Find x to the nearest tenth. What is x? X is an angle, isn't it? So anytime I'm looking for a missing angle, since x is an angle, I'm going to use my inverse functions. Okay, so look at the first one. Circle angle A. That's what we're looking for x. And let's label this. This is the opposite, this is the adjacent, and this is the hypotenuse. So I don't have the option. If I don't want to find the adjacent side, I'm going to use sine because sine uses opposite and hypotenuse. So this would be the sine of x equals the opposite over hypotenuse. Is that a 27? Sort of looks a little iffy.
Yeah, 27.
Okay. Now, how do I get x by itself? Guys, so if I just asked you for the trig ratio or what sine x is or the decimal, that's it. But I'm asking you to find x. So how do you cancel out that sine function to break the x out? You do the inverse sine. So that would cancel. And then you would get x is approximately, and we're just going to type in our calculator. Make sure it's sine -1 for inverse. And then you could either use your division key or you can use your fraction key. But you want to close those parentheses. All right, so nearest tenth, 28.8. Did you find the keys?
Yeah.
And it was an angle, so it is in degrees. Okay, now if you wanted to, you could have used Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus 13 squared equals 27 squared, and found the missing side. And then you could also go back and find the other angle. They didn't ask us to do all that work, so we used what we have. Well, we'll set another one up. So let's set up this guy. Circle that, right? What is the 8? What would we label the 8? That would be your adjacent. All right, the 27, that's your opposite. And the one we don't know and don't need is the hypotenuse, right? So looking at SOHCAHTOA, which one uses adjacent and opposite? Tangent, yep. Or looking at it that way. So that's all I'm doing. I'm saying it's tangent of the angle that I don't know equals opposite. Make sure you double check you have them flipped right, over adjacent. So again, I am looking for a missing angle. I'm trying to get rid of the tangent. So if this was multiplication, I would divide. Since this is a tangent, I'm going to do the opposite inverse operation, which is inverse tangent. So that's where we're using that. Just like taking a square root cancels out a square. All right, so type this in your calculator. Find this in your calculator. I said I'd set it up, but I'm doing the whole thing with you. So second function, either your PRB key to get you trig, and arrow way over. This would be the 6th option. Hit enter, put it in fraction bar or parentheses. Now, if your calculator, and I had a student whose calculator does not put parentheses here, they cannot use division. They'd have to put their own parentheses. So you have to be careful. It should be in parentheses. What will we round that to? 73 point what? Nearest 10th. 73.5. Yep. All right. So the time is yours to finish this and check it. If you guys